grace and flashes past the window on the 13th floor. One more sad life crashes, broken by the yearn for more and more. Another spin of the wheel, roll of the dice, or ace on the turn. You beg, borrow, or steal, or trade your soul for bands to burn. In God we trust, says on the bill. From boom to bust, may give a thrill. It can steal your life, dominate your goals, make a trouble and strife. Seek another soul, this little paper deity. Let's go and flash the plastic, blow it all on hot girls and wheels. Let's do something drastic. In the morning we'll never feel. Where were you on Black Wednesday? Stood for hours outside the Northern Rock. Still hungover from Tuesday. Must we take this banker's crock? In God we trust, says on the bill. From boom to bust, may give a thrill. It can steal your life, dominate your goals, make a trouble and strife. Seek another soul, this little paper deity.
Good evening, everybody. How are you all doing? I hope everybody is doing well and has had a fantastic week. I've had a really good one. I've had a busy one, but it's been a really good one. And I'm getting my feet tangled up in my cables. Hang on a sec. There we go, sorted. I had my the USB cable to my computer keyboard entangled in my foot. I have no idea how that happened. But anyway, welcome to Sunday Night Live at Jonny Lipsham Studios with me, Jonny, and it is May the 4th, so happy Star Wars Day to you guys. Although here it is now 5 minutes past midnight, so it is now May the 5th, unfortunately. But anyway, for those of you that are in the Facebook groups, the mixing mastering one and the home studio trainer one, and if you're a Facebook friend of mine, you may well have seen that I just posted up a video earlier showing you how you create the lightsaber sound, or how it was created, I should say. And then this guy did this really excellent recreation of how they did that, and it was really cool, so I thought I'd post it up. And it was also quite entertaining. He's quite a funny guy as well. But he really knows his stuff about sound design, about mixing, and recording. He's really good. So go check out his YouTube channel. He's called Dr. Mix, I think it is. Dr. Mix, I think. RJ says, where are we going tonight? We are going to Aberdeen tonight, so hope you don't mind joining me for that. So, we got 15 people in here already. That's awesome. RJ says, far away. Yes, we're going to a galaxy far away. And probably a long time ago as well. So, anyway, I hope everyone's doing good. I'll turn the music down just a little bit more. So, tonight's show is a little bit of a different one. So, we're going to be taking a look at some of your mixes of Paper Deity. I've had a few sent to me, which is great. So, I'm going to feature 3 of them tonight, and the lucky 3 I will reveal shortly. But just to say, a really big thank you to everybody who has been watching that Paper Deity mixing series, where I basically unpack and show before everybody how I go about mixing my song anybody's song. That's kind of my methodology that you watched. I mean, it's a variation of my methodology. I do, generally speaking, I do a bit more mixing in mono than I did in the series, but I basically wanted to give you a snapshot in each episode of kind of what I do and how I go about it and what I'm listening for, what I'm looking for when I'm mixing a song. And this one, Paper Deity, I chose this one because A, it's got some challenges, and B, I'm not going to get struck for copyright because it's my song, and C, it's a small track count, so it's easy for everybody to get into, whatever level you're at, whether you're beginner, intermediate, advanced. Everybody should be able to get something out of it and learn something from it. So there we go. And the chat is going absolutely bonkers. So thanks very much, everybody, for coming. We've got 17 people. So we're going to be looking at a few of these mixes tonight. And I'm going to reveal the 3 in just a second. But just to say, hang on just a second. I have to take care of something that I've forgotten about. Let's just do that. There we go. Okay. Normality is restored. There we go. So we're going to feature 3 people's mixes tonight. And I basically put out an email to everybody who's on my email list saying, if you would like your mixes to be featured in the show tonight, send me an MP3. 3 if you did. And they are all very different mixes, which is really cool. That's kind of what I wanted, because it's good to show kind of like different people's take on it, different people's approach to the song, and kind of like where people are at, different people are at in their kind of their journey through mixing. Some of you are kind of at the very beginning phase. You've just beginning to get into mixing. You've been doing it maybe a few months. Some of you have been doing it for maybe 2 or 3 years. Some of you have been doing it a lot longer than that. Some of you are very well experienced and well versed in mixing, which is great. And so I kind of wanted people to send me their mixes wherever they are on that spectrum. It doesn't really matter, because I just thought it would be valuable for everybody, whatever level you're at, for us to be able to feature these. So what you were listening to just there was my mix. That's the final result of the series. And I think in episode 9 we kind of did a comparison with my original 2016 mix. And I think it's plain to see that both the original mix and the new 2019 mix are very different. And there's lots of different reasons for that. Some of which is different mixing environment. I'm in a completely different room than I was back then. And so, this room sounds different. Completely different, actually. So, actually, I would say that this room here, because... Oh, I just nearly destroyed the mic. This room, because it's bigger, means that there's a lot less of a low-mid issue, which is what I had in my very small box room that I was in before. I didn't really have a low-end problem because I had a huge chest of drawers. If you watch some of my early live streams, you would have seen that I had a huge chest of drawers in one corner. And that kind of acted as a bass trap, which is cool. And then, of course, I had a window behind behind the camera, which, again, took out a lot of the low end from the room, which is great. But I don't have that now. So, so this room has, in a lot of ways, the issues that I had before are gone. But it's got completely different issues as well. There are some standing waves in here. I basically put up my acoustic treatment from my old room. I need to kind of probably add to it a little bit and deal with some of the other flutter echo issues that are in this room that weren't in the other room. So I need to spend a little bit more money when I get round to it, but I've been really far too busy to actually do anything with it. So I'm kind of just, getting used to the quirks of this room and mixing around it, really. All right, so let's see who we have here. And we have James. He was the first one in the room. James Gio, hello to you. And Kyle Jeruziak is here. And there's me. There's Bobby Booth. No show would be complete without Bobby being here. David SJ is here. Just Bob is here as well. Ken Moss is here. Good to see you, buddy. Big Ron 865 is here. RJ Hagler is here as well. He says, where are we going tonight? To a galaxy far, far away. Otherwise known as Aberdeen or Dundee. Mika Han, how are you, my friend? I hope you are healing up well. And he says, good evening to all, which is cool. Let's see. Mika Han asks, did anyone use Harrison Mixbus? I've heard lots of things about Harrison Mixbus. I've heard lots of good things, but I've also heard, some not necessarily good things about it. I've heard that it sounds fantastic because the whole thing is a DAW modeled after an actual console. But I've also heard that because it's modeled after a console, it's a little clunky. But consoles are clunky, so it's probably fairly true. Kyle says, I only have a few third-party plugins, but not that one. Yes, Harrison Mixbus isn't a plugin, it's a DAW. George Warner is here, and he says, I own Mixbus, but did not use it on this mix. Now, one thing I do know is that not everybody did this mix in Studio One. Some of you used Reapers. I know, David, you used Reaper, because you told me in your email that you used Reaper. And a few other people used some different DAWs, which is cool. That's absolutely fine. The idea of the series was mixing, not mixing in Studio One. So I use Studio One. I've used Studio One since 2013. And before that, I used Cubase since the late 1980s when it was first invented. And there's a story behind that, which I'll tell another time. But yeah, so please post in the chat if you have done this mix and you used a different DAW other than Studio One. That would be very cool. It'd be cool to see what other DAWs have been used. So I think we're caught up with the chat now. We're caught up with seeing who's here. We got 22 people in the room already, which is great. So let's get into this. So who are the lucky three tonight whose mixes we are going to hear? Now, here's how it's going to go. We're going to listen to a little bit of each mix that people have done here, and here's the way I would like this to go. I would like folk in the chat to post constructive and helpful criticism. Nobody is to say anything negative about any of these three guys' mixes, okay? Because these guys have they've volunteered their mixes up to this show tonight. And understandably, they are probably a little bit apprehensive about that, a little bit nervous. I think it's very brave of them to do this. So I applaud all three of you for putting your mixes forward to be featured in tonight's show. So I very much appreciate that. So I want really for us to talk constructively in the chat about each one of these mixes and things we like about them, and talk positively about things that we think, hey, there's a little bit of room for improvement in this area. There's a little bit of room for improvement here. So the idea is that we all kind of go away at the end of the show with some strategies that we can take forward into our next mix. Now, whether you're a seasoned professional who's been mixing for donkey's years, or whether you're just starting and this is maybe your third or fourth completed mix, we are all in a position where we need to have a strategy for taking things forward. So, I've done probably several thousand mixes over the years. But, I still need to learn from this mix what I can do better in the next one. We're all in that position. I mean, if we get to the point where I go, hey, I don't need to learn anything anymore. I have learned all there is to know about mixing. At that point, you sell all your studio gear and you go get a proper job. In my opinion. Maybe a little harsh, but, I think we all have to have a little humility here. So, yeah, let's be nice to everybody and be constructive. And let's see. Bobby says, I only use Studio One. Cool. Ken says, use Studio One. That is my DAW, although I have Reason 10 and cannot get it to load because all my WAV files cause it to crash. Uninstalled today and I'm not looking back. Awesome. And yes, we are all learning. Absolutely. So let's unveil the 3 individuals whose mixes we are going to look at tonight. Let me just go and switch over to the Studio One screen. And I've got them all in different colors. So my mix is at the top. Not because I'm top dog, but hey, this is my song. So I put mine in first. All right. And then we have... now, David, I'm not sure how to pronounce your surname. But I think it's Jelima. If I've butchered that, I apologize. And Ken Moss is mixer number 2. And finally, bringing up the rear is George Warner and his mix. And I've tried my very best to level match these. I've also had to do, as you can see, there's the little cogwheel on David's mix here. I had to do a little bit of time stretching because for some reason, when I brought this into Studio One, it was considerably slower tempo than all the other mixes, including my own. So I had to go and kind of fix that a little bit by ear. But I think we've got it. I think we've got all these at the right level and at the right tempo now. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to a little bit of each one of these mixes, and we'll discuss everybody's mixes as we go. So we're not going to start with mine because you've just heard mine. So the next one up is going to be David. Sorry, David. Hope you don't mind going first. I'm just going to do them in order as they appear. So mine one was number 1. You guys heard that on the way in the door. So next one is going to be David's. This is the one we had to time stretch a little bit, and I know for you had a bit of a problem uploading it at 320. You had to downsize the resolution a little bit, so we're all going to take that into account. We're not judging this on the quality of the resolution. We're judging this, and we're not really judging it, but we're going to be commenting on this on the basis of the balance of the mix and everything else. We're not really going to be talking about, this sounds like it's a lower quality playback. No, that's not the issue. Forget that. All right, so here we go. Here's David's mix.
Past the window on the 13th floor. One more sad life crashes, broken by the yearn for more and more. Another spin of the wheel, roll of the dice, or ace on the turn. You beg, borrow, or steal, or trade your soul for bands to burn. In God we trust, says on the bill. From boom to bust, may give a thrill. It can steal your life, dominate your goals, make trouble and strife. Seek another soul, this little paper deity.
And we're going to stop right there. What do we all think of that? I think that's really a really great effort. I got to say, I think that's a really fantastic effort. David, I think you should be very pleased with yourself for what you've achieved there. Because overall, I think it's pretty well balanced between the different instruments. David says, really, I mixed it 100 BPM. Could be because I rendered it at 256. That's possible. Yeah. Yeah, we're not judging its constructive criticism. Absolutely. Mika asks, did you sidechain compress that bass slack kick? They're working well. That's a really great point. That's what I thought as well. And actually, I didn't think of doing that in either 2016 or now in 2019. I didn't sidechain the kick and the bass together. That's a great idea. I maybe ought to have tried that, but that worked really well. Yeah, the kick and the bass worked really, really well. And I think the panning as well. There's a good stereo width in the mix, which is great. And the vocals are nice and up front. You're not losing any of the vocal at all at any point. Very, very clear, very crisp. I think overall, yeah, balance is really, really good. Let's see what else folk have to say in the chat. Just Bob says, sound like a great show tonight. Probably won't chime in tonight since I'm building a walkway next to my garage, listening in the background. Okay, Just Bob, that is absolutely fine. So I'm going to say a very big hello to you, my friend. Hope it is going well. Mika says, I can hardly wait to hear the drums. Yeah, the drums are such a big issue with this whole song in the first place, because of the way the drums are recorded, or rather not recorded, or rather recorded then replaced, which is what actually happened with this song. The performance by my drummer, a guy called Dave Lightly, was a really, really great performance. But here's the thing. The recording didn't come out very well. For a variety of reasons that we didn't realize until after because basically he came in and just did a whole day in the studio, and we basically recorded all 5 drum tracks in a day. And as far as we're concerned, everything was going great. We got everything done. We rehearsed in the morning, we went and had lunch, then we came back, and then in the afternoon we cut all 5 drum tracks. And then, he went off and he had to get a plane because he was flying to Sweden because he's on a tour and all of that. So the story with that is we got all of that done, but then when we listened to all the playbacks, we realized the drums sounded rubbish, but they really shouldn't have, because they were mic'd well, and it's a 1964 Ludwig drum kit, his gorgeous Ludwig drum kit, which is adorable. It's a wonderful drum set. So it should have come out great, but we don't know why, but it just didn't. They sounded really, really horrible. So we found a sample pack of exactly the same drum set as he had, and we replaced them. And that's how we did it. So there you go. So that was the issue with the drums, really. And the challenge is that those drums are mono. Because the drums were recorded with one mono overhead mic and a kick drum mic. Because I quite liked the minimal miking sound that we got, or at least we thought we got. When we were monitoring as he was recording, they sounded great, but as soon as we listened to the playbacks of the recording, yeah, they didn't. Let's see. Ken says, I can hear the bass very well, very distinct. Yes, absolutely. It's a really good sounding bass part, actually. Good sounding bass track. Mika says, how does YouTube process live audio? I'm streaming at 720. You're probably best to see if you can stream at 1080. You might get a little bit of extra quality out of it. But yes, that's going to be part of the problem as well, as we're going to be dealing with YouTube's resolution as well. So kind of like anything that we hear, we're going to have to take with a tiny grain of salt at least. Kyle says the drums sounded a little bit dull compared to the percussion. Yeah, I would say there is some kind of low mid build up in the drums a little bit. Mika asks what the overhead drum mic was. I think we used a ribbon mic. I can't remember what the make was. It wasn't my microphone. Bottom end sounds almost like in a live room. Yeah, I think there might have been, with the sample pack, I think there might have been a room reverb baked into the drum sound, as I recall, actually. Which, we just couldn't deal with, which makes compressing the drums a challenge because you're compressing a reverb as well. So everybody probably had a lot of fun with the drums. So let's see. David says, I know I didn't think about using a transient processor until after I uploaded it to Jonny. Ah, right, okay. Cool. Bottom end sounds almost in a live room, says George. Yeah. I think that might be the fact that the drums were recorded in a relatively large room, and then we kind of replicated the whole thing. Because we wanted it to sound as close to the original recordings as possible. And then, of course, we just baked it all in. So, there you go. The reverb is printed to the drum track. Carl said, when I did parallel compression, it made the baked reverb a bit louder. Yes, it will do. It will do. That's the challenge. You have to kind of find that biting point, I call it, with parallel compression, where it's giving you the extra kind of sense of forwardness without kind of having that baked-in reverb coming up too much. Paul says the balance was good, which is half the battle. Absolutely, the balance was really, really good. Okay, should we move on to the next victim? Unless anybody else has got anything else to say. If you've got any more comments on Dave's mix, then please get them in the chat now. And I'll do maybe 2 or 3 more comments. And then we'll move on to Ken's mix, I think, is next. So get a couple more comments in the chat, and then we'll move on to Ken's mix. Whilst you guys are typing away, I'm just going to queue up Ken's mix. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's get Ken's up there. There we go. That's all that set. All right, nobody's adding more comments. Okay, we'll just move on to the next one. We'll move on to Ken's mix. That's not a problem. So let's go over to Studio One again, and we're ready with Ken's mix. If you still want to say something about Dave's mix, that's fine. Just just get them in the chat, and that's fine. We'll talk about them as we go. All right, here we go, Ken. You're up next, buddy. Let's take a listen to the same section of song. Here we go.
Another grey suit flashes past the window on the 13th floor. One more sad life crashes, broken by the yearn for more and more. Another spin of the wheel, roll of the dice, or ace on the turn. Beg, borrow, or steal, or trade your soul for bands to burn. In God we trust, says on the bill. From boom to bust, make every thrill. It can steal your life, dominate your goals, make your trouble and strife. Seek another soul, this little paper deity.
Alright, we're going to stop in exactly the same point. And we're going to go back to the screen over here. Hello, everybody. You can see me again. Alrighty. Let's see. David says, thank you, everyone. That was actually my 4th ever completed mix. I've only been doing this for about a year as a hobby. Well, you know what, Dave? That is really, really good. That's a fantastic effort for mix number 4. Well done. Give yourself a pat on the back, bud. Alright, so that was Ken's mix, and Just Bob says, streaming to my stereo and listening through the window. Dave's mix sounded vibrant and warm to me outside. Well, that's very, very good. Mika says, great job, well done for a newbie. Yep, that's awesome. Kyle is commenting. He says, on mine, I slightly detuned the second lead vocal. That's a good idea, actually. Because you're right. There are points where, because when I did the vocal, I did 2 passes. So what you hear there is take 1 and take 2. And the idea was that you would have them kind of blended together as a kind of doubled vocal. So that was the idea, and there are points where I did actually sing almost exactly identically what I had sung previously on the previous take. So there are some points where, yeah, it would help maybe to have a little bit of detuning going on. So that's not a bad idea, Kyle. Bob Powell says, drums and bass very low in the mix. Yes, I would agree with that. The vocal sounds very, very good. It's very upfront. It's very forward. Guitars sound pretty good. I couldn't really hear the backing vocals too terribly much at the end there. I think they were kind of all panned over to the left, which is fine, you know. Everything else in the stereo field was pretty well balanced, so it didn't sound odd when the backing vocals were just in the left channel. The horns I thought sounded quite nice at the end there as well, so that's cool. Let's see. George says would like to hear more drums on Ken's mix. Yes, I'd agree with that. And I think the bass is there. The bass is present. But it could certainly do with kind of having a little bit more punch, a little bit more impact. And the drums could definitely be quite a bit louder and a little bit more impactful. But yeah, the drums were the hardest part of doing this mix. So, but yeah, Ken's mix overall is very good. Just those changes, really. The Carl says the keys are fairly bright. Yes, I would agree with that. The Fender Rhodes comes through nicely. It cuts nicely. It's nicely separated from the guitars, which again was another bit of a challenge for this song because there's a lot of low mid-range in the Fender Rhodes. It's just the way the Fender Rhodes is. It does have a little bit of a low mids build up, and then you've got the muted palm muted guitar, and then you've got the tremolo guitar as well. So you got all of those kind of hogging the same kind of areas. So that's a challenge to separate those. And you did a good job there. Just Bob says Ken's mix was really good. The only thing I'd offer is to turn down the keyboard a bit and raise the drums and bass. Yes, I would agree with that. Quite a bit, at least 100, maybe higher. Yeah, they are very, very quiet. You could definitely go a little bit more crazy with the drums. Be bold with drums. Drums in a kind of song like this really ought to be almost as upfront as you would have them in a rock song or a pop song. You know, kind of have the kick and the snare right in your face. Just because it's kind of got some jazz elements to it and some jazz harmony and stuff doesn't necessarily mean that you have to treat it like you would an acoustic jazz record. Because there are enough rock elements in the song whereby you can treat it kind of as a rock song and then kind of like go nice and light and easy on those jazz elements as well. Like the horns obviously have a bit of a jazz element to them. The Fender Rhodes is not necessarily standard fare in a rock song these days. So you can treat that as something that's quite light and you can be light with, but the drums and the bass and the vocal, you can slam them, get them up front, be bold. Let's see. Carl, I figured you found a lot more presence than I did. Really nice sounding mix. Cool. Ken says, I have had some problems in previous mixes of songs where the bass was way too loud when I listened in the car, so I'm still trying to learn that sweet spot. Now I seem to not have enough. Ken, I have a question for you. Are you mixing in an acoustically treated room, kind of like mine is? I've got foam up on the walls, and I've got bass traps in the corners and that kind of stuff. Do you have any of that in your room? Because if you don't, it could well be that there's a lot of bass energy in your room, and that's lulling you into a false sense of security about how loud the kick drum is and how loud the bass guitar is. So you think, wow, it sounds fantastic in my room. Then you take it out to the car and it's just there's none there. And then you kind of like go the other way. So you overcompensate and you go, okay, well, because there was none there, I'm going to really crank it. So you really crank it in the room absolutely floods with low end, and you go to the car with the mix and there's too much. So it could well be that your room is a little bit the issue. So what I would recommend is maybe run your mix through some headphones, run your mix through some earbuds, try it on run the mix through a boombox as well. That's another good thing to do. Even if it's one of those old mono boomboxes from the 90s, the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, I had one of those JVC boomboxes. I still got it. And I've replaced the speaker cone on it about 4 or 5 times. But that's a good option because it's mono, and it's going to give you an idea of what your mix is going to sound like on a mono sound system. That's going to be quite mid-rangey and honky, like most, boomboxes are. But if it sounds good on there, then you can pretty much guarantee it's going to sound pretty good everywhere else. So that's an option for you to consider, Ken. Ken says, no acoustic treatment right now. I'm using the HD7s more than my monitors, but I always try to double check on computer speakers, mixing mono, etc. Yeah, good. Okay. It may well be that it's the acoustic treatment issue that is the stumbling block for you right now. I would say maybe use your HD7s 95% of the time in that case. And just occasionally flip it to your speakers. But if you're going to flip it to your speakers, you need to turn the volume down, because your speakers will reflect off, the sound coming out the speakers will reflect off your surfaces in your room, and the bass will build up in the corners. So you really need to kind of get the level down coming out your speakers so there's less energy hitting the walls, and therefore there's less energy bouncing off and back into your mix position. So acoustic treatment, you don't have to put expensive stuff up. I mean, what I have in this room cost me £100, which, just over £100, which is going to be about $85. You can do it for under £100, under $100, I should say. Do it reasonably well. Now, obviously, some of the 1-inch thick foam is not really going to do very much for the broad mid-range, but it'll certainly deal with any highs and upper mids that you've got going around in your room, and bass trapping will help manage the low end in particular. If you don't have any of that, then certainly things like a chest of drawers like I used to have, and just stuff it with books. Book cabinets, bookshelves. Bookshelves make fantastic acoustic treatment. They really do. Just get a couple of bookshelves and put them on the left and on the right and stuff them full of books, even if you never read the books ever. Actually makes your room look quite homely, but they absorb a lot of low ends. They absorb a lot of the low mids. They're really good broadband acoustic treatment, and it's cheap to do it that way. So there you go, Ken. I hope that helps you. Kyle says, I try to mix at the lowest volume to keep fatigue down. Yeah, that's another good thing to do, is take regular breaks and, keep the volume to around about the level whereby if, somebody was sitting next to you, you could talk at this kind of volume to them. And you're not talking over the top of the mix. You're just holding a normal conversation and the music is there as kind of like a music bed. If you mix at that volume, yes, you're going to lose a little bit of some of the low information because, low information requires a lot more energy for it to come out of the speakers. But, good speakers, good speaker drivers, you'll still get some of it. Let's see. Mike Neighbor is getting together with me over the summer and we are going to build some. Okay, great, Ken. Mike is a great guy. He's a fantastic guy. I can't recommend him to you more highly. He's a really fantastic bloke, and he will be very helpful to you. Okay, great. So that is Ken's mix. Well done. Overall, really, really good. Good effort. Especially considering you have no acoustic treatment in your room. That's pretty good. You just need to get some low end into that mix and get some, get some drums happening. That would be very, very cool. Okie dokie, let's move on to the next one. Let's see, I need to just set this back up again. So the next victim is going to be George. So let's go over to the Studio One screen. There we go. Let's get back to the beginning of the song. And here is George's mix. Here we go, George.
Another grey suit flashes past the window on the 13th floor. One more sad life crashes, broken by the yearn for more and more. Another spin of the wheel, roll of the dice, or ace on the turn. You beg, borrow, or steal, or trade your soul for bands to burn. Ain't got your trust, says on the bill. From boom to bust, may give a thrill. It can steal your life, dominate your goals, make a trouble and strife. Seek another soul, this little paper deity.
And we'll stop that there as well. And that was George's mix. Well done, George. Good effort. Very different sound to the other ones, including my own. I think you gave it kind of a much more kind of modern, contemporary vibe, which I actually quite like. So what am I hearing there? I'm hearing the bass sounding really quite aggressive, which is quite nice because I don't think mine was. There's quite a lot of punch to that bass, and it sounds to me like you replaced the kick drum, which is probably not a bad idea, because the original kick drum was quite jazzy, a little bit flabby, and if you're going to go for that much more kind of modern contemporary vibe, then yeah, replacing the kick drum makes sense. But yeah, it's a really well balanced mix overall, and I like the chorusing you've got going on the Fender Rhodes, which is something I didn't do. I left the Fender Rhodes very, very clean. And I think I ever so slightly overdrove the Fender Rhodes into the amp, just a hair, just the merest hair of overdrive into the amp, which was a Fender Twin. I think I used. Did I use a Fender Twin? I think I did. I think I used a Fender Twin, maybe. I can't quite remember. It's a long time ago that I recorded that now. But I think I used the Fender Twin on the Rhodes with just a hair of overdrive. And you've kind of made it nice and bright and nice and modern with a nice bit of chorusing, which is very cool. Let's see. Nice crack on the drums. Yes, says David. Yes, absolutely. That snare drum sounds fantastic. Bob T is here. He says, hey, good to see you, Bob. Welcome. Carl says, on my speakers, the bass was overwhelming the kick. Too much tambourine. Yeah, the tambourine was much louder than I think in anyone's mix so far, including my own. I had it quite a bit dialed down. Yet there is quite a lot of bass. George says, I added some kick samples to the original. Oh, right. Okay, that's what you did. Okay, cool. Just Bob says, George has a very dynamic sound. Bass a little too loud. Sounds like the jazz band Four Plays. Yeah, that's the band I was thinking of. That's the group I was thinking of. Four Play. Nathan East is the bass player in Four Play. Harvey Mason being the drummer, or the late Harvey Mason. That's a great comment, actually. Yeah, I think the bass is probably a little bit too loud. Dial the bass back just a hair, so it tucks a little bit under that nice, extra sample kick drum, and I think you'd have a really, really tight sounding low end. Just Bob says, too much fun, had to stop my sidewalk project. Yeah, it is. It is an exceedingly good mix, George. I gotta say, exceedingly good mix. You did a really, really great job. And I know a little bit further down the line you did some stuff with the sax as well, which we haven't really got to because I mean this is an hour-long show. We don't have a lot of time here. Let's see. Paul Lucas says, notching out around 60 hertz on the kick has helped me with defining bass parts from masking. That's another good suggestion. Side chaining definitely works. I didn't use it, but I know some of you have done, and that would have been another good idea, particularly with the replaced, or rather the added samples to the kick drum. Sidechaining that to the bass would have really made those guys go together well. Mika says, love what you did with the stereo field. Yes, absolutely. It's a really nice, wide, broad mix. It's great. The BVs were quite far up front for me personally. I kind of like my background vocals to be kind of tucked behind a little bit. And the reason why I like that is because I have a particular approach to backing vocals. I mean, this is all kind of personal taste thing, but my particular personal taste when it comes to backing vocals is I like them to sound like the saxophone section of a big band. So the brass are going to be the brighter, maybe slightly louder section of the big band, with the saxes kind of providing some of the low mids and all of that, and maybe a little bit, because they're reed instruments, you get a little bit of the bite as well that you don't necessarily get with brass instruments. So if I consider my singing voice to be the brass, my lead vocal to be the brass, then I like the idea of my backing vocals to be the saxophone section. If you follow that analogy, but yes, George, you did a great job. I'm really, really impressed. Really impressed. I mean, I'm very impressed with everybody's mixes. I think you've all done a really good job, and you've all had a different take. Excuse me, a different take on the song, which is really nice. And that actually, that helps me, because I learn a lot from how other people mix my songs, because it means that somebody else is hearing something that I'm not. Not because it's my song, but because, somebody else is going to have their own personal taste. Somebody's going to have their own musical background, their own history, their own influences that I don't have. And so the way they listen to my song will be different to the way I listen to it. So they'll hear different things, and they'll emphasize different things than I would do. So I learned a lot tonight, guys. Ken says, I agree. I liked all the mixes tonight. Learned a lot. This was the first mix I tried exclusively in mono, and I tried the parallel compression for the first time as well. Great to get the feedback. Well, Ken, considering you did that, and you made use of parallel compression for the first time, that's very cool. That is very cool, and mixing in mono as well for the first time. So you've employed some newer techniques, and then you've had the confidence to say, hey, I want this to get broadcast on my show. So Ken, I really appreciate that. That's very cool. David says, I spread the lead vocal out about 25% left and right. BV's about 33, center 33. Yeah, I keep even my double goes up the middle as much as my lead, because I tuck them underneath each other. So my first take in this particular case, sometimes it might be the other way around. Sometimes take 2 is the one that is the up front one, and then take 1 is the one that sits behind a little bit. So my double kind of sits behind just a little bit usually. And then I like to, I see what you mean. You don't pan very, very much. You like to have the backing vocals surrounding the lead vocal, which I do too, but I like to spread them out maybe a little bit further than that. Let's see. The Voxengo Stereo Touch was my secret sauce. That's a good idea. I've heard lots of good things about that, actually. Kyle says, so when the backing vocals kick in, the image gets much wider. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in this song, the verses are fairly mono, and then the idea was the choruses were going to get a little bit wider. So those of you that kind of tried that, that's good, because that shows that you're understanding the ebb and flow of a song. That the chorus should be, still part of the song, but have something special about it, to make the chorus unique, to make the chorus the bit that grabs the listener's attention the most, more than the verses do. George says, I have to say that I had a demo of UA Ocean Way Studios at the time, and I printed and added some of that plugin on various instruments. Liked it a lot. I know a few people that like that. My good friend Warren Hewitt uses the Ocean Way quite a lot. Dave Vignola, I think, has used it a few times. I don't have it. It's a little bit out of my price range right now. But you said there's a demo version, which I might well go and try out, actually. That might be quite cool. All right, folks. So we've got about 5 or so minutes left of the show. So what I'd like to do is really kind of devote the rest of the time on the show to any other questions you've got. Doesn't have to be about these mixes or even Paper Deity. It can be about any other questions that you've got. We would normally do just a regular question and answer session. So let's do that. And I'm happy to overrun tonight because I can sleep in tomorrow. I don't have to get up early because the kids are off school tomorrow, because it's a bank holiday tomorrow. So when it's a bank holiday, kids don't go to school. So they are away to Glasgow with my wife tomorrow to go and see their grandma, who has just had a hip replacement operation. So they're going to go and look after her for a bit. And I'm going to stay here and just kind of chill out. And because Monday's kind of a bit of a day off for me. So I'm prepared to run over tonight by a wee bit if you guys are up for it. So we've got 19 people in the room right now. We've lost a few because I think we kind of peaked around about 25 or so. Be nice if we could get a few more people coming back in. But yeah, if you guys have got more questions, let's get and do that. That'd be cool. Before we wrap up tonight. If you don't, that's fine. But yeah. Any other questions you've got? We could talk about harmony. We could talk about chords. We could talk about songwriting, how I wrote Paper Deity. We could talk about any other questions regarding production and mixing and mastering and all of that fun stuff. And then next week, it will be just, next Sunday will be just a regular show. There are going to be some more videos coming out this week. So Thursday, there'll be something coming up on de-essing and that kind of thing. Because I've had a fair few questions on that coming into my inbox just recently. People asking, there's no de-esser, there's no stock de-esser in Studio One. How do you do de-essing and all of that? So that will be going up on Thursday, and then we'll be back round to Sunday again, I guess. So yeah. Any other questions, or am I just gonna play Fender Rhodes until? I can play Fender Rhodes. I can do whatever you want. Bet you weren't expecting that chord. Let's see. Do we have anything? Carl's chatting to James and says, thanks for watching my vid. Okay, David asks, on Vox, do you put delay and reverb on separate sends? On my mix, the lead vocal had the delay and reverb on the same track to get the delays to work with the reverb. I tried the multiband compressor on the overhead, says Kyle. Okay, on vocals, I did 2 sends. Excuse me. Snorting, I didn't mean to do that. I did. Let's actually go and look that up, shall we? Let's go and open that mix, and we'll remind ourselves what we did do. I'm going to close that. Do you want to save changes? Yes, I'll save that. Yes. Okay, let's open up the mix for Paper Deity. Okay, let's see. What did we do? Yes, I did do. Oh, you're not seeing this, are you? Because I haven't pressed that button. So, yes, I did do, as you can see, on the lead bus send, on the lead Vox bus sends. There we go, getting my wrongs in the word order yet again. I did do a separate send, so I have a room reverb and the analog delay, and the room reverb I think is a plate. Yes, it is. Plate reverb with an EQ after it rolling off a lot of the low end and some of the highs, and a tiny little boost at 1.8k. And then the delay is a dotted quarter note with again lows and highs rolled off, and it's set to ping pong, so it starts in the right, then it goes left. And I don't have a whole lot sent to it, just like minus 30 going to it. And again, an EQ after it. A little bit more of a bump at 1.8. And that was that. Let's go and check what your other question was, because I think I missed that other question. What was that other question? So yes, Dave, I hope that answers your question. I did use reverb and delays on the same sends section. Carl says, I tried the multi-band compressor on the overhead. Mika says, in the old days there were no stock DSs. Correct. Exactly right. You had to make them. Or you just did without. If you were lucky enough to have a Dolby unit, you would use that. Carl said to tame the cymbals. Yeah, I used a de-esser, is what I did. If you saw the video where I mixed the drums, you'll see that I used a de-esser, which I used reasonably aggressively, I think. Let's go and take a look. Drums, overheads. There we go. Overheads. We do have a de-esser. What does it say? Yeah, we've got this set quite a lot, quite high. Kind of almost at 3 o'clock actually. We're using the SPL de-esser from Plugin Alliance, which is actually really good. Now you can, as Kyle correctly pointed out, you can use the multiband dynamics plugin. This guy over here, you can use that and just compress that particular area, kind of de-essing style, just using that one band to tame the cymbals a bit. You can certainly do that. You can use the compressor plugin, the standard native compressor plugin with the sidechain filter enabled, so that the compressor is only compressing in that area. You can certainly do that as well. That is definitely another way to do it. Let's go and see if there is anything more to say. Common Ground is here, says Johnny, love the mixed feedback format. We'll have to jump in next time. For DSs, try sibilance from waves. Easy to use and natural sounding. Yeah. It's also a little, or it certainly was, I don't know whether it still is, but it certainly was a little bit pricey at the time that I've seen it. But yes, I heard good things about that. I've seen a few demos done of sibilance actually. Mika says, if you use a bus as if it were an effects channel, then you can send the delays to the reverb. Yes, you can. I rarely use effects channels in Studio One. I rather use buses. Yeah, that's a great option. That's a great way to do it. Absolutely, totally agree with that. Carlson went back and forth. Okay, Ken says, you said the backgrounds in my mix was only on the left. I hard panned 1 and 3 left and 2 and 4 right, so they should have been balanced all at the same level on the faders. Wonder if something in the mix down. It's possible that you've maybe got some frequency masking going on, but I really couldn't hear the ones on the right very much. So it could be an EQ thing. Maybe go back to those BVs, solo them up, and hit the mono button and see if you can kind of separate the 4 voices a little bit more, and then get them back into stereo and get them back in the context of the mix and see if that has helped at all. It could be that you've got some frequency masking going on. Entirely possible. And you just need to do just a little bit more notching on those BVs. It's possible. David says, I combined them on one send so the delays would interact with the reverb. I'll try sending them back next time. Yep, that's another good option. Yeah, Mika's point there about using buses for effects channels is a great suggestion, because you can send a reverb to a delay, or you can send a delay to a reverb, which you can't do otherwise. I'm not sure whether that's ever going to change, whether they're going to be sends on the effects channels or not. I don't think so. I know there's a lot of votes up on the request for that in answers.presonus.com. But I'm not really sure. Yes, good point, David. BV4 was only active on one short phrase. Yes, on the One Life More Than Gold line. It's the only one that comes in there. And so you would end up with 2 left and 1 right. So that might be where your problem is. Just kind of adjust the panning so that you've got maybe 1 up the middle and 1 on either side, and then you can put number 4 someplace else, either slightly towards the right or slightly towards the left, but off center. You can certainly try that. Mike Neighbor in the room, and he says, yo dude, good to see you, mate. Let's see, Mike says, send on an effects channel, just use a bus channel. Yep, absolutely. Yep, we do not have sends on an effects channel, but we're talking about using buses as effects channels. Mika has suggested that already. Let's see. George says, is there a way that we can hear the entire mixes? We can. What I can do to finish the show, if I go back to it, just give me a second, folks. If I go back to Studio One, if I close that. No. And if I go back to that one. What I can do is I can go back to the beginning of the song. Just give me a minute to set this up. And we can play through the whole song from start to finish, and I can basically switch between different mixes all the way through the song, so that everybody's, we hear a part of everyone's mix all the way through the song. We can certainly do that if that is something you think is a cool idea. Certainly do that if you are up for that. Oh, that's my phone. I forgot to put the darn thing on silent. Typical. There we go, it's on silent now. That was funny. So yeah, if you're up for that, we can do that. Mike says, I find the effects channels not helpful. Well, the thing with the effects channels, if you just drag a reverb from the browser to the send of a particular channel, it automatically creates an effects channel. It just does that. So, it's a little less practical to create a bus. You have to right click, create the bus, and then put the effect on it, and then do the send. It's like 3 or 4 extra steps, whereas you just drag the effects channel to the channel send, and it creates the effects channel for you with the return set up on it. So yeah, but there are no sends on effects channels. I don't know, maybe that will change in the future. Who knows? If you guys go and vote that feature request up in answers.personas.com in the Studio One feature request thread, high voted feature requests regularly get added to new versions of Studio One. So that would be something you could do. Paul says, I never use effects channels. I can't find a use for them. Well, you can put effects on them. You just can't send that effect then to another effect. Mike says, I'll take the extra steps. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, there's no right or wrong about it. You either like it or you don't like it. I do it both ways. George says, yes, I'd like to hear the different sax solo treatments. Oh, that's a good idea. Why don't we jump straight into the sax solos and do it that way? Mika says, less practical for Personas to make Studio One with automatic effects channel creation. They know this. It'll change over time. Yeah, it may well do. You may be right. Bobby says, did you get my MP3? I haven't. The only ones I've featured tonight are ones that were sent to me since last week. So it's possible I haven't. Make sure you send it to Jonny@JonnyLipshamStudios.co.uk. Okay, send it to that address rather than doing it through the contact form on my website. Mike says, see what I start. No, it's fine, Mike. Really, it's a debate. It's a perfectly legitimate debate, and you've made a perfectly legitimate argument. It's fine. I do it both ways. Some people find more use for effects channels than others. Meh. Sometimes I'll use a bus. Sometimes I'll use an effects channel. It doesn't really matter to me. Which way I do it, whichever way works for that particular mix, that particular song is, kind of where I go with it. All right, so we'll finish up the show by listening to everyone's mix. Let me go and find the appropriate point. I'll drop it in about here, and I will flick between the different mixes until we run out of song. Basically, I think that's going to be a cool way to do it. All right, let's press that button, and we'll start at the top. So we're going to start with mine, and then we're going to go on to Dave's and Ken's and George's, and I will play just like I'll just flick between the 4 mixes. Here you go.
Dominate your goals, make it trouble and strife. Seek another soul, this little paper dating.
Okay, here we go. Dave's mix coming up. Here we go. Pen.
Since I'm Bill, front boom bust, make it a thrill. Still
a fade out on that one. And there we go, folks. Some really good efforts there on the sax solos. Great work, because it's really hard. Mixing tenor sax is really hard because it's a very, very dynamic instrument. You know, there's quite often times a lot of transients, so you have to think about how you're going to deal with compression to kind of even the whole thing out, depending on, you know, the performer in that particular song. So yeah, some great efforts there. Yes, Ken says, looked like one mix was faded out. Yeah, I chose to let it play to the end. I guess that is musician in me, although I know a DJ would just talk over it on the radio, but hey. Yeah, I think even on the record I did a fade out. For the original 2016 recording, I did a fade out. So, but it doesn't really matter too terribly much. Dave says, mine could have used a bit more top end. Yeah, you could probably have opened up some of the upper mids a little bit more. Because it did sound a little bit like it was in a box. A bit. But, you know, hey, you know, that comes with experience with mixing sax. Recording Studio 9, that's my good friend Vatcher down in Australia. He says, thanks. I'm not sure who he's thanking, but that's awesome. How are you getting on with your new desk there? Have you got that in yet, Vatcher? I'd be really interested to find out if you got that in, because I know you were talking about having to get a new desk. So, yeah, that'd be interesting for me to know about that. Let's see. George says, thanks for putting this together, Jonny. Well, you're very welcome. Very welcome. And Mika says, good work on all mixes. Well done, everyone. David says, comparative listening helps a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Listening to other people's treatment of the same kind of thing. I mean, this is where reference tracks are really important. To get really good at mixing, you need to listen to really good mixes. You know, to get really, really good on tenor sax, you have to listen to great tenor sax players like John Coltrane and Michael Brecker and Chris Potter and you know, Cornelius Bumpus and people like that. You know, by listening to great musicians, you get you know, their inspiration into you, and then when you go and play your own horn, you know, you take some of the things that you hear from those great players and you kind of bring them into your own playing. I know certainly for me as a piano player, you know, I spend a lot of time listening to McCoy Tyner and Bill Evans and Thelonious Monk, and you know, they're three great piano players, but three very different piano players, and they had a lot of influence on me in different ways, different aspects. And, you know, I listened to them a lot. I wore out the grooves on my Bill Evans records. And Thelonious Monk, I just love Round Midnight. It's a beautiful piece of music. So, you know, I play that from time to time on this guy. And so, you know, listening to great musicians helps you become a good musician. And I think it's the same for mixing. If you want to get really good at the craft of mixing, listen to great mixes. And, you know, even listen with a piece of paper and write down the things you really like. You know, hey, I really like how they treated that, you know, the low end of the song, the kick drum and the bass. I love the way they interact. That, you know, they really work well together. There's lots of good energy down there, but it's not overwhelming and that kind of thing. Make those kind of notes. Like tonight, we talked a little bit about, you know, how useful side chaining a kick drum to the bass guitar is. That it allows the kick drum and the bass to share the same space and to have some ebb and flow as well. So, you know, stuff like that. That's how you get better at mixing. I don't really tend to do that particular side chaining thing because, yeah, most of the time I work in jazz. Most of the time I'm not really doing that because the kick drum is very rarely playing with the bass. particularly in more modern jazz, maybe in kind of early swing music, yes, the kick drum is going to be playing with the bass. I know I might do a little bit of very, very light side chaining. But, you know, for the most part, I'm not. So I don't really, it's not something I really think about a lot. But, you know, given that my songs tend to kind of like be in this kind of jazz, pop, jazz, rock kind of area, maybe that's a good thing that I should start doing. So, I've learned a lot from you guys about that. So, Matcha says, Presonus Australia has given me a free upgrade from the 16 Series 3 to the 24. Awesome! Well, that's very, very cool. You are one blessed fella. That is for sure. He says, should arrive today. Well, that's awesome. So I hope your desk is all set up and ready to go. You'll have to send me some pictures, mate. That would be very cool. Let's see. David says, thanks everyone for the feedback and the kind words. And says, thank you very much, Johnny. This is very special and appreciated. Well, you're very welcome. And we will certainly be doing something like this again in the near future. I will do another series and we will take another one of my songs. I've got one of my songs in mind, which I think would be another challenge because it's a completely different song altogether. And there's lots of other elements to it. So, that make it challenging. I think maybe we could do that. So one of my other songs from my Belonging to Tomorrow EP, we could certainly do. I did Paper Deity because it's a little bit more kind of middle of the road kind of jazz pop. I figured everybody would be able to get something out of it. So I think maybe for the next series we will do maybe Belonging to Tomorrow, the title track. That might be quite fun because that one is definitely much more of a challenge. Paul says, brave lads you are. Good job. Yes, the three guys that submitted their mixes to me, congratulations. You've all done a really great job and well done on being that brave to do so. I really appreciate it. So I think on that note, we are going to get out of here if I can find the right button for getting out of here. And I'm going to say a big thank you to everybody for coming out and watching the show. We peaked at about 25 and we've kind of hovered between 25 and 20 all the way tonight. So that's very cool. Popular show, huh? All right. So thanks everybody for coming and I will see you on Wednesday where I'll be doing Songwriting Simplified with Jonny Gibe over on his channel, which is the HST live streams channel. Go check that out. And that'll be at the same time on Wednesday. So Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central. And then Thursday, there'll be some more videos of mine going up. And then we'll be back around to Sunday. And it'll be a regular show for Sunday. So a regular Q&A with a talking point. If you have an idea for a talking point, a discussion point, or something that we can, a mixing technique that you would like to see demonstrated, send me an email to johnny@johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk and just put the subject line as talking point for Sunday Night Live. And I will collate a few and we'll feature those talking points over the course of the next few weeks. So if you guys are up for having your talking point featured or a particular large scale question that you'd like us to tackle that we can devote a whole show to, email me. And we'll get it in the queue, and hopefully we'll have a good load, so that I don't really have to, think of what would be good that we could talk about. Much more fun when it comes from you guys rather than me. So, all right, folks, I will bid you a very good night. Take care. Find the right button now. There we go. Good night.
Grace flashes past the window on the 13th floor. One more sad life crashes, broken by the yearn for more and more. Another spin of the wheel, dice or ace on the turn. You beg, borrow or steal or trade your soul for bands to burn. In God we trust, says on the bill. From boom to bust, may give a thrill. It can steal your life.